Hi, everyone. I'm Marilyn, CEO and founder of Cosmic Centaurs, and your host for most of the third edition of the annual Cosmic Conference, all about the employee experience. To better understand the employee experience throughout the 3 weeks of the conference, we will be exploring it through a variety of lenses: internal comms, employee engagement, flexible work, recruitment, upskilling, retention, purpose, organizational strategy, office design, you name it, and so much more. Until October 21st, I'll be joined by thought leaders, academics, experts, and managers who will share insights, experiences, and perspective on the employee experience. If you'd like to see our conference lineup, do join us on our website, which we will leave a link to in the comments. And you can both rewatch the previous session as well as sign up for the upcoming ones. And before we begin, as always, do show us some love, give this video a like, tag someone in the comments who you think might enjoy it. But also, and perhaps more importantly, so that Tony and I don't feel so lonely up here, tell us where you're joining us from, ask us all your questions, share your reactions to what we're saying. We'd love to see everything you have to say, and we'll try to make sure to answer all your questions before the session ends. And with that, let me introduce today's guest. Tony Jamous is the CEO of Oyster. He's a tech entrepreneur and angel investor. He's made over 100 direct investments in global technology companies with a focus on developer tools, platform models, impact ESG, fintech, and HR tech. He is currently building the future of work through his new venture, Oyster, a global employment platform that allows growing companies to tap into the global talent pool and offer their remote workers around the world a great employment experience. Prior to Oyster, Tony co-founded and led Nexmo, a leader in CPaaS, that's Community Platform as a Service, acquired by Vonage in 2016. He started his career in 2004 in the cloud communication and mobile industries. Tony, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, Marlene, and hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Today, you and we're going to be talking about a lot of things. Organizations in distributed settings like scale-ups and large organizations, they face a number of challenges when it comes to providing great employee experiences. Often those challenges, they stem from, a lack of shared understanding of culture, difficulties with communication, misalignment, especially as organizations grow. And let's face it, remote work has a lot of advantages, but it also makes it difficult to get it right. It adds a layer of difficulty when it comes to implementing these things at scale. But as we saw in our previous session with Tarek Saiduddin from Zenshin, even if aligning an organization to shared purpose, values, and culture sounds challenging, the results are definitely worth it. And today, Tony and I will continue to explore this topic of how remote and hybrid companies can make the employee experience more intentional, through purpose, culture, leadership, great communication, flexibility at scale, and a lot of other topics. So without further ado, let's get started. Tony, tell me the story of how you started Oyster. Kick us off right there.
So I started Oyster in January 2020, but before that, the whole concept of Oyster started in my previous company, Nexmo. When I started it 12 years ago, we had to employ people in over 40 countries. And what I realized, from one hand, that it gives you a massive superpower as a business to be able to tap into the global talent pool, and but also you can change people's life in many countries. You'll be the best employer for Diego in Argentina, for Mohammed in Morocco, for Mary in Athens. So when I exited this business and took some time off, and I really wanted to, whatever I'm going to do next, it was important for me that align what I do, that I believe in. And one of the characteristic of the company I wanted to build would be a fully distributed company. But I wasn't looking forward to the challenge that we faced in my previous company. We had to set up legal entities, hire lawyers, accountant, payroll provider, benefit providers. I mean, we spent millions of dollars building an internal HR global infrastructure, and we failed to deliver on a great employee experience. So I started looking for solutions back in mid 2019. I could not find solutions. What I found was a professional services industry called employer of record that enabled companies to hire people in other country without setting up the entity, but they were very expensive. They were no use of software. I mean, it was really ready for software disruption. So I knew that if we use software to make global hiring as easy as local hiring, not only we can build a new category of global employment, but also we can change people's life in many countries. We can reduce brain drain. We can reduce inequality. Just to give you some data points, there are 90 million jobs going unfulfilled in the West, according to BCG. That's $8.5 trillion economical loss. While you have 1.5 billion knowledge workers coming into the work for the next 10 years. So it was clear to me in January 2020 that my company not only will be fully distributed, and today we are in 70 countries, but it would be the platform to enable the whole world to transition to global employment. And that's how Oyster started.
Wow, that's a really cool story, actually. I didn't know that. And so I wanted to ask you, part of what we've promised our audience to talk about here today, and also because it's such a strong element of the Oyster brand, every time I speak to somebody who works for Oyster, within the first 10 minutes, they've mentioned some, their adapted version of what they believe the purpose of the organization to be, which is truly beautiful to see. It's quite uncommon that within the first few minutes of chatting with anybody from any company that they bring up purpose. But I wanted to know, where does your purpose come into this? Was it that you knew that, for example, enabling global economies is something you feel strongly about? Is what made you connect to this specific business model, and how did it align with your purpose?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Lebanon as well. I was born in this country that is today not really providing any opportunity to its population, and I had to leave the country when I was 17 for better economical opportunities. And really, when I exited my last business, I took some time to clarify why I'm here, my purpose, and I realized that I want to create my own world. I don't want to change the world. I want to change my own world, and I want to live in a world that enables me to be flexible. I want to live in multiple countries. Enables me to be there for my loved ones. I don't want to sacrifice my time with my children, for instance, as a technology CEO, always flying from one country to another. And I also wanted to build a business that create massive amount of safety, psychological safety for people was important to me, and finally a business that is highly diverse and give the opportunity for people around the world. So it's really about realizing that this is the world I want to live in, and what I realized actually that it's not only me, like many people share that. Many people want freedom. Many people want to be empowered from without leaving their home countries, and this is how it was clear that this is why I'm here, and this is why I want to build Oyster.
I love that. Actually, I always joke, when I'm introducing what we do at Cosmic Centers and talking about my purpose around human collaboration, I joke, but it's not really a joke, that part of the reason why I care so much about human collaboration is because I come from such a conflicted country, where it's so important to be able to bring people together to build something. So that resonates a lot with me personally, coming from Lebanon as well. Thank you for sharing that.
I mean, Marilyn, it's really about, you have to follow your pain, your suffering, and there's some wisdom in that. Like, for instance, as I grew up in Lebanon, I spent the first 10 years of my life in a civil war, and all I knew was people trying to kill people without any reason, and that created massive feeling of being unsafe around the world. So you develop this form of PTSD, that you're constantly having high degree of hypervigilance, essentially. So for me, healing from that is to create, to live in a world where I feel safe, and to be able to do so, I need to create a massive amount of safety for my team around me, and that result in highly trusting teams, and then drive to success. So essentially, this is how you turn you follow your suffering, you find wisdom in your suffering, and you turn it into purpose. And that's what I think is authentic leadership.
That's beautiful. You have a co-founder. Is that right?
Yes, Jack.
How does he align around that purpose?
Yeah, so
How do you guys?
Yeah, Jack worked for me in my previous company. He was the best marketer in that industry, and he's like the best storyteller I know. And Oyster, before being a technology company and a software company, we are first and foremost an idea. Before the pandemic, we wanted to convince leaders that remote work is the future of work, and it's better for business, it's better for people, it's better for the planet. So we had this whole story developed, and I partnered with Jack to to deliver that story. And we were very fortunate to have the world move into remote work much faster than we anticipated. And this is how I end up working with Jack. He's also a future of work thinker. So he has a lot of ideas about how the world should move to in terms of work.
There's a question from the audience, and it's a question that I also wanted to ask you just about now, so I'm going to bring it up. It's essentially, and you kind of just started saying it, how you turned your pain into purpose, and then from purpose, you turn that into a form of leadership, that safety for your teams to be able to operate value. That's one way that your purpose lives your decision-making and your way of being every day. What are the others you make sure that the purpose of your organization is behind everything that you do?
Yeah, so I think first you want to be very clear about why you're here as a leader. You want to connect your mission with your business model. So for instance, in our case at Oyster, the more we employ people around the world, the more we give flexibility, the more we give opportunity. So there's 100% alignment between our revenue growth and our impact. It's also about aligning with the goals, aligning your mission with the goals. So your objective key results that we have on a quarterly basis include we have a North Star, which is the number of team members that are on platform that drives our mission forward, and the percentage of these team members in emerging economies. It's also about the hiring process. Like you want to also work with people that are mission driven, that are joining this business for more than just making money. So as part of the interview process and the selection process, we make sure that we assess the motivation of people, and this is some of the ideas. Actually, another one is also to give empower and freedom to people to work on mission related areas in your business. So we have something called the mission squad, where from every team there's a representative that represents the mission that is infiltrated in every team, and they work together as an organized group to progress a mission related project across the organization.
Driven you to say no to an opportunity?
Well, actually, we see purpose more as the how rather than the what, right? So it's rarely where we say I mean no, because it's really it's guiding us. It's how we do things. It's our philosophy. It's our intention is through the lens of the mission. Now, obviously, there are certain. Actually, being mission driven is a double-edged sword, right? So you really want to care how you implement the mission in your company, because you have high degree of scrutiny by your employees about your decision making. So you want to integrate mission thinking into your decision making, and be very mindful of how you cannot claim to be wanting to be the most human-centric company in the world if you don't integrate the mission in some of these decisions that you do. So it adds additional level of complexity for leaders, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I understand that. So actually, my next question is about leadership. There's always a gap between what leaders think they're delivering in terms of employee experience and messaging and what their employees see them as delivering. What do you think is the most difficult aspect for leaders to get right when it comes to being in mission-driven organizations? And so that's my first question. And the second one is, what is something that maybe is surprisingly easy to get right, but many people don't use those tools?
The most difficult part of scaling employee experience is really establishing and maintaining consistency. So you want to maintain consistency around the purpose, why you're here, about the culture, how do you work together, about the leadership, how do we lead, how do we make others feel safe, and also in terms of communication, how can you be transparent, how do you react to bad news? So all of these things need to be consistent, and not only for you as a CEO of the company, but for any leader in the organization. So you want to develop leadership principles that enable you to create that consistency, and that's very hard to do, especially for companies that are growing fast. And your second part of your question is about what is surprisingly easy that many might get wrong. I think what is relatively easy is really you want to be yourself as a leader. You know, you want to be authentic, and many of us leaders, we have fears like any human. So essentially, we try to kind of hide some part of our personality, but actually, the employee experience is massively influenced by who these leaders are and how they behave. So by being a more authentic and actually allowing yourself to be fully present in the experience of building the company is actually easier than we think.
I really appreciate that point. I always, for example, I don't know if that's the case in Oyster. I haven't used it hands-on, but there are so many different platforms where, for example, you can engage your team or send out surveys or, whatever it is. And I always get upset because me as the owner of the channel or the CEO in the org chart, I never get asked about what I think or how I feel. And so I always tell my team, like, just the same way that I create psychological safety for you, you have to do the same thing for me. I have to know that I can be my authentic self, that I don't have to censor myself or have to behave in ways that feel untruthful because I'm afraid of your reaction. And so is there a way that you make sure that people around you don't treat you as the Superman all the time?
Yeah, I practice what I call putting the fish on the table. So what I mean by that, there's, in relationship, there's always these fears of what the other person think and how they might react, and therefore you start to avoid them maybe or hide some part of your personality. And so when I feel that there is something like that happening between me and my team, actually I tell them, I put the fish like, look, I'm like, for instance, recently I had an example. I was having fear of one of my executives to leave the company. It was completely an illusion in my head. He, wasn't really thinking about any of that. But for me, his behavior kind of triggered some past behavior, some past experiences I have, and I started developing this behavior where like I want to please him. And I told him, like, can we talk about this, please? Like, I don't want this to be in the way of our connection and our relationship. And we were able to take this fish from under the table, and because it was starting to smell, and then put it on the
Thinking.
table, and we discussed it. And yeah,
Oh
we do
my
not
God, I
need to be.
love that. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use that metaphor. It's such a good one. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's go a level kind of closer to the ground now. We've spoken a little bit at a high level about purpose and leadership and how you bring yourself to that place. Let's break things down in terms of how you implement them across different touch points in your organization. So when it comes to communication, right? So I know, of course, your company is global. There's, of course, a big direction towards being asynchronous in global settings. But also in making explicit everything that you can. A lot of things that you could have remained tacit in co-located environments now have to be made explicit. How do you ensure that communication is effective in Oyster and not getting in the way of building a great employee experience?
For us, what effective communication is essentially communication and collaboration that enable people to be successful, no matter what they are and no matter how they work. And let me give you examples of some of the things we do to achieve that definition of effective communication. One is we invest in our internal documentation the same way we invest in our customer-facing documentation, so that people around the world, because we have people in 70 countries in very different time zone, can be effective without the need of pinking their colleague on the other side of the world, right? Secondly, is we define very clearly what we call the tools and the rules. So which tool we use for what? So we use Zoom for this kind of meeting. We use this tool like Loom for recording video. We use this is how we use Google Docs. This is how we use Asana. This is how we use Notion. And we also code what is how do we run meetings, and depending on the type of the meeting. For instance, in my executive meeting, that happens every Tuesday. Before the meeting, everybody would listen for an hour and a half for short videos about everything that is happening in every team. So we know the update. Everybody knows the same information at the same time, and then we go into the meeting, and we already have consumed before the meeting some sort of asynchronous documentation or a video that enabled us to prepare what the topic at hand. And this is like the best so far. It's been like the most productive executive meeting I've had in my life. We also we have training. So we have the Oyster Academy. Through the onboarding process, we train people on these tools and these philosophies. But also we structure the channels of communication within the company. So we have the all hand channel. We have channels for core announcement. We have a channel for asking leadership questions, anonymously or not. And we have many more channels. But we are very intentional in designing the channels of communications.
Brilliant. And then when it comes to engaging employees, how do you do that? Like, of course, there's the communication layer, but then there's the broader engaging, telling the story, keeping them, connected to what you're doing, inspired. These days, of course, we all know we're all sitting here waiting for a massive crisis to fully unroll. How are you keeping spirits up in the organization in this time?
So the way we engage employees, and by the way, we are top 3% of all VC-backed company in terms of engagement. We use a platform that benchmark us against our peers, and how we achieve that is first and foremost by designing a way of working that gives people freedom and flexibility no matter where they are, and make them successful no matter what they are. Secondly, is by developing an environment that is hyper diverse and hyper inclusive. We are over 100 nationalities in the company. We're 60% women, including on the leadership team. That's unheard of in technology. We're also give people purpose. As you know, Oyster is a mission-driven company first and foremost. We're B Corp, and we have massive alignment. We have 100% alignment between our business model and everything we do. And I would say, last but not least, is about continuous measurement and improvement. So we run our engagement survey twice a quarter. We get the data, and it's surfaced up to the leadership team, and we commit on improving some of the area. And actually, I have to say that the chief people officer in this company is a strategic role, reports directly to the CEO, and he's a partner of mine. So unlike many companies where the people function is it's not considered strategic. Actually, we consider that a strategic function.
I fully appreciate that. I always worry when I see that the people function is being managed like an admin problem rather than a strategic business problem. So happy to hear that. Given the diversity, both of culture, experience, location of your staff, how do you maintain human connection? How do you build those relationships beyond the relationship to the organization and its purpose, but the human relationship towards each other?
Yeah, I think first we make it part of everybody's job to build connection. So it's part of your job description, and we actually part of the onboarding process. We give you some tips and how you can do that at Oyster. So when we give them the tools as well and the opportunity to do so. So we have social Slack channels. We have donut application on Slack where we randomly connect with people. We have after parties after our all hands, and I actually do play an important role myself. I consider myself as CEO of the company, but also Chief Cultural Officer. So I do the new joiner calls. I do the 1-year anniversary call. People have been with us for 1 year or more, and then and the way I lead my team is I have one-to-one meetings with them every week. I start with actually 10 minutes conversation that I call the heartbeat conversation, that we don't talk about the business. We talk about the person, what's happening in their life. I try to connect with them on the personal level and actually let them into my world, so we can build trust. And that's possible because I have already received the results ahead of time asynchronously, right? So I'm not worried, I'm not anxious about how the business have done. I already know how the business have done and what the leader has planned what are the plans of leaders. So essentially, this way of communication and collaboration that default to async to get stuff done, but remains the synchronous connection for building human connections. I also have to say that there is value in meeting in person, for sure. Mm-hmm. It's actually complementary. Every company will have to decide what is the frequency. And Oyster, I've met my executive team twice in the history of the company. Once last November and a few months ago, and it's really the difference between knowing that you trust the team and feeling that you trust the team. I remember after our first meeting, one of our VPs came to me and said, before that, I knew I could trust the team. Now I can feel I can trust the team, because you have all these emotional body language that you don't receive when you're working virtually. So that made a difference.
Beautiful. Someone here is asking us about the kind of opportunities that you provide for training and upskilling. You did mention a lot about training your people on your internal kind of best practices and ways of working. What is your approach to upskilling and growing your teams internally?
Yeah, so as a company that believes in elevating talent is one of our values, we invest in this area in an intentional way. And the biggest investment we've made is around training people on becoming better remote workers, whether they stay at Oyster or after they leave and they take other jobs. They are, as they go through the Oyster experience, they exit as some of the best remote workers on the planet. And that we call it the Oyster Academy. There's actually two programs for it. One is about training remote employees, and one it's about training the people operation team to implement this type of distributed and effective way of working in any organization. And that's actually, it's free, it's publicly available. Any remote worker can take the training, any people ops person can take the training, and you can find that on oysterhr.com/academy.
Yeah. And in terms of, providing flexibility, obviously is always a beautiful promise. But then the bigger an organization grows, the more that flexibility is hard to maintain. People break the rules, they take advantage. What's your approach to creating a system that continues to work even at scale?
When we think about how do we scale a business and keep it agile and flexible, I'd like to think about it as a software architecture. I think you want to design your organization like a software platform where it is modular. You have this concept of microservice, and then you have interfaces between these modules. So let's say you have, finance, or let's say finance operation as let's say one module and one team. That team will have to design the ins and outs, let's say the API of interfacing between other modules in the business, and that gives you as a leader the opportunity to start connecting modules together, shifting things around in a much more agile way.
I really appreciate the systems thinking approach to this. And actually, towards the end, maybe our last LinkedIn Live, we'll be joined by Brice Dong, who works for Roche, and she has to manage agility for 14,000 employees. And she'll be talking about how to apply systems thinking to creating these flexible and agile environments. So for those of you listening in now, you might want to join us. I think it's on October 21st, but you can check our schedule. Can I be a devil's advocate with you now and ask you a question that is a bit less comfortable to discuss when we're big advocates of remote work? I'll preface this by saying, I told you earlier that I'm an architect. And as an architect, I attach particular emotion and symbolism to place, as well as to culture and history and geography. I think that even if we choose to elevate ourselves, and technology has provided us with ways of dematerializing our presence and our contribution, I still think that place and history matters. I don't think that we've been able to completely rid ourselves of that. The other day I was interviewing John Priest from Australia. I gave him the example of the New York Times building. Recently we saw, I think it was 3,000 New York Times employees petition, or 1,300, can't remember now, petition against going back to the office. And I was a bit floored, because particularly that building where you can walk in and see the printing press, and there's something to be said about being in the streets of New York and walking into that building, or there's a lot of similar examples where the physical space where a company is or begins its journey has a big influence on culture and how you connect to the history of the organization and its future. What are your thoughts on the role of place in the future of work?
I think that I'm not like a hardcore activist against working in the office. I think there are some use cases where in-person meeting is required, especially as you go up in the hierarchy and the tasks become more creative, more ambiguous, more challenging. But not at the expense of designing a human-centric workplace, because you cannot, if you force people to, if you make work as a prison, then we're back to slavery, right? I mean, like so you want to design a workplace that gives people flexibility and freedom. So to give you an example, this morning I need to go to the dentist. I don't want to worry how should I squeeze in the dentist in my schedule. On Friday we have we call it Focus Friday, where we don't have any internal meeting, and we can work. We can just focus and get ready for the weekend, and so that we don't have to work in the weekend and disconnect. I don't work in the morning. I live in the island of Cyprus. My team is mostly in the UK and the US. So I spend morning going to the gym, have my coffee without having to worry about my emails. I can spend time with my children, go to the beach. So so number one is really you want to design. It's not at the expense of human freedom and human centricity. Secondly, it's not at the expense of the planet and the environment. Like people that commute to go to the office, people that go to the office and keep the lights on for 24/7. We are pouring 4 times the equivalent of New York City in terms of concrete every year on this planet to build urban areas, and this density of population has become totally unsustainable, and we need to disperse people on this planet so we can reduce our environmental impact. I mean, if you're a leader today, you have to whatever you design your org and the way of working, make sure that it's not at the expense of human centricity and environmental impact. And I want to say that the human brain is very influenceable, right? So because so the experience we have today with technology, like think about our grandparents, they have no clue that we are today live in an age of information, that you can hit a button and send $1 million from one part to the other part of the world. I mean, it's crazy. So the next generation will adapt as well. They will look at us as dinosaurs of work. They're going to say, really, you used to go to the office? I mean, weren't you happy to leave this factory? Aren't you happy to live in a 2-bedroom apartment in London and pay £3 million mortgage on it versus living in the countryside and have all the space and give us a better life? I mean, like, think about the next generation. Like, we owe it to the next generation to enable them to work effectively and with the place they wanna work in.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You reminded me of something my husband always says about cities, because of course the quality of life in cities is never better than outside of them, right? But the trade-off that we make, that's what he says. I think it's always a very beautiful idea, is that the trade-off that we make when we go to cities is that we trade quality of life for the proximity to other people's ideas and creativity. Like today, obviously, we're not talking about the Industrial Revolution.
Yep.
How do you maintain that energy actually of creativity when you're not together? I'm not saying that it's not possible. My team is distributed, we are never in the same location. So I've experienced it myself, but just interested in seeing like how you maintain that energy.
I think like we don't need more energy. Like, I'm a CEO of a unicorn that went from 0 to 650 people in 2 years, right? I mean, like, I don't need more energy. I need more space. I need more mindfulness. I need more calm in my life to be able to be more effective as a leader, right? I mean, so I'm happy to live in a remote island, and I can hop on a plane if I need to. Absolutely need to. Actually, my travel have dropped 90% since I in this company versus my previous company. And when I did the analysis a few years ago, 95% of all my carbon footprint is air travel. So
Wow.
I mean, like, leaders, hear me out. If you can make the business without traveling, you have to stop traveling. Like, this is not what your children want you to do now.
I appreciate that. Actually, you're just making me think. I'd love for you to talk about the program that you guys developed around being able to recruit refugees, if you don't mind, just for a second, because I think it's such a noteworthy,
Sure.
Proposition.
Yeah, so Oyster for Refugee is a program that enables companies to hire refugees in areas where there's a lot of refugees. And the refugee population is the most underemployed population in the world, because they usually don't have work permit, they are unbanked, they cannot open bank account, and they are usually highly capable talent that is not capitalized, not given the opportunity to participate in the knowledge economy. So with Oyster for Refugee, we enable companies to employ these refugees compliantly in the countries where they reside in.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely beautiful. Just a little plug here, sorry if you don't mind. We actually have a fund called the Cosmic Centers Fund that helps to create opportunity for digital upskilling for women in Lebanon. So if anyone's listening here and just said, oh my God, this is amazing, and you want to contribute, one is you can hire a refugee to work for you through Oyster, and two, we'll put the link in the chat, but if you want to also just contribute even just $5 towards helping, bridge the digital gap for women in Lebanon, I'd be really grateful. Plugging that in just for a second. Do a little good today. I think we're getting towards the end of our time together, Tony. I'm going to take us to our rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Go for it, Marian.
All right, so I'm going to start some statements and hopefully you can complete them for me. So a great employee experience is?
Caring about how people feel working with you.
I really like that. Just a note on that, the other day I did this whole keynote about like how to think about employee experience and the touch points and how to like strategize and whatever. And someone commented on it and I thought it was so beautiful. It put me right back in my place and I loved it. He's like, maybe also just mention that it's important to care about the people you work with. And I thought, yeah, how did I miss that one?
Because actually,
right.
I mean, the reality is that in order for you to care for the people that you work with, you have to care for yourself first. So it really becomes a growth journey for leaders to go in that direction.
I appreciate that. One trick I always use is I always try to empathize with what I call past Marilyn. So I always think like past Marilyn made the best decision she could given the information she had and how she was on that day. And I try not to, the feelings of regret and shame are two emotions that I don't allow myself to sit in for very long. And I really love what you're saying about you have a duty of care towards yourself and others, but you have to do both in order to be good at them.
I think before becoming a leader, you have to lead yourself. That's self-leadership is a necessary condition.
A great one. Okay, next one. The book every leader should read today is?
Leadership and Self-Deception. It's a short book. You can read it in a couple of hours. It's really about, gives you a simple framework of how you can design your human relationships.
I've heard of that one. I'll look it up. The ideal workplace is?
Designed for the needs of human.
Absolutely. And the secret ingredient to a great employee experience is?
Intentionality.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Tony. Honestly, I was so happy to be able to have this conversation with you, and you delivered so many punchlines. I'm going to go back and re-listen and take a few notes. I think whether it's the practices that you guys have in your organization, your decision making, the way that you reflect around your own leadership, but also your presence as an individual and a human in a group. I absolutely loved your example about putting the fish on the table. Such a beautiful way of putting it. I think it's really wonderful to see a leader be so open about all of these things. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of these insights.
Thank you, Marilyn.
And on that note, a big thank you, as always, goes to our attendees for tuning in and engaging with us. The video, of course, is available on LinkedIn to be rewatched, hopefully forever. And we'll soon be reposting it on our YouTube and our website. You can join us again next Monday. I think we have a session with Jillian French from Work Vivo and Scott Armstrong from Mental. We'll be talking with Jillian about the importance of moments in the employee experience and how to tell stories and make moments memorable, and with Scott about the importance of mental well-being, a topic that Tony also brought up. Our team at Cosmic Centers is, of course, I just show up and try not to mess up their work, but they're the ones doing all the heavy lifting in the background. So if you want to make us all happy, then go to our website, sign up to our newsletter, read a piece of content, or just send us feedback. It'll really make our day. with that, thank you so much for having joined us all over this week, and we really look forward to seeing you all next week signing us out.